Good morning from Panhandle Outdoors with Winston Chester. Panhandle Outdoors, your source for fishing, hunting, and information for folks who enjoy the great outdoors. Now sit back, relax. It's Panhandle Outdoors.
Good morning, folks. Welcome to Panhandle Outdoors. I'm Winston Chester. I'm glad here this Monday morning. I want to wish a happy Memorial Day to everyone out there in America, especially the Panhandle Outdoor viewers. This show is dedicated to all of our fallen servicemen, men and women who have dedicated their lives to freedom here in America. So let's get started with our weather brought to us by Haney Technical Center. It's going to be a beautiful day. It's going to be a high today of 86 and a low of 68. Water temperature stays at 74 degrees. And I'm going to skip the river readings today. Most of y'all just were on the river this past weekend, and we'll go right on the tide chart. Let's look at a tide chart brought to us by Kent Forest Lawn Funeral Home and Cemetery. You're looking at a low tide at 6:02 a.m. and a high tide after lunch about 1:21. Good strong tides today if you're going to do some bait fishing. They're excellent over there today. So if you get a chance, go ahead and do that now. I'm doing a short weather because I want to get into the video because it's a long video, and I recently had a chance to interview Ken Tucker. He wrote this book, Last Roll Call. It's a wonderful book. Ken grew up down here in Apalachicola, actually East Point, and did just a marvelous job on his book and all. But he talks about, he's born in 1925, talks about growing up down in that area. I interviewed him a couple of hours, and Gail spent several hours breaking this down. I'm going to get 2 shows off of it. So this is just be part 1, and we're going to do part 2 later when he actually gets off into World War II, becomes a B-17 gunner, tail gunner on a B-17. So we've got a great story. It's part of our Panhandle heritage. We're rich in our heritage of outdoorsmen and men who served their military and served their country. So we're going to take this break and come back and sit down and enjoy, just relax and enjoy this interview with Ken Tucker. Hi, folks. I'm here at the home of Ken Tucker. Now, a lot of y'all may know Ken Tucker. He wrote this book, Last Roll Call, and this is a true story. Now, Mr. Tucker was a B-17 tail gunner in World War II, and originally he grew up in Apalachicola.
Across the bay from that.
Across the bay in Apalachicola. We're going to do a little interview and just get a visit with him. I just want y'all to get to know him. He's a wonderful man, and he got a great story here. And first of all, let's start, growing up in that area. We do an outdoor show, and growing up in that area, you were around a lot of fishing and seafood, wasn't you?
Oh, that's all we had. I grew up I was born and raised during the Great Depression.
Yeah.
And we could always get something to eat out of the bay. We had plenty of oysters and fish and shrimp, things like that,
Yeah, yeah.
But we traded some of the farmers from up around Alpha and inland,
Uh-huh.
About every 2 or 3 weeks, one of them come down there on his old Model T and trade us cornmeal and vegetables for fish and oysters. So it worked out real good.
That's amazing. What year were you born?
What year?
Yeah.
1925.
1925. So you got to go right through that Depression era then.
Yeah, I remember some hard times.
Wow, I bet you did. What in the bay? There's a lot of fish out there back then. Was there a lot?
Oh yeah, I remember when my dad was a seafood dealer.
Okay.
And I remember when he paid 2 cents a pound for mullet, it put him on a limit because he could only sell so many. He'd say, well, I can only handle 200 or 300 pounds, tomorrow. So they'd go out and catch what he ordered, and that was it. He had a couple of regular truckers. One had a seafood market in Thomasville, Georgia.
Yeah.
He came down every Thursday, and my dad always had saved seafood,
Uh-huh.
And then another guy from Tallahassee, I believe it was.
Uh-huh.
He wasn't as regular as the guy from Thomasville, but you could set your clock by the man from Thomasville.
Yeah.
He kept us alive.
Well, back then, how about the flounder and the redfish and all stuff like that? A lot of that out there then?
Lots of them, yeah.
Yeah.
Flounder was not only was money-making thing, but you know, a lot of people did it for recreation.
Now, what kind of light did y'all use back then?
Well, back then we we called it a floundering jack. It was a wire basket. You'd get a metal hook and a basket of wire, and you'd have a long pole out on the front of your boat, and you'd hang that down from that end of that pole,
Yeah.
and build you up a fire in that basket,
Yeah.
and you would go along and
You'd use those lighter knots and stuff like that?
You'd always start it with fat lighter knots and things
Yeah,
like that,
cool.
but you'd put something on there that would last.
Yeah.
And that was a good light. Next morning you'd be smoked up, but it was not on it.
About how many? Will y'all get a lot of flounder out? You stayed out all night? Y'all get a lot of flounder?
Well, yeah. Well, see, you had to flounder on your tides.
Yeah.
You didn't flounder all night because you see you had to flounder on a rising tide. When it started falling, they'd start moving offshore. But same way with gill netting. I did a lot of gill netting even when I was in school, high school, during the summer, and sometime on weekends. I had some relatives that were in the fishing business, and I would go gill netting with them.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot about the tides and certain things. Like this one distant relative of mine was an old guy. He was a weatherman. Anytime anybody was going fishing or when the weather was going to be, Uncle Mac would walk out on the end of my dad's pier, his dock, and look around. He'd scan the horizon, you know. He said, "I think we're going to get an northeaster tonight, or it's going to come out of the southwest or somewhere." But he was just about as accurate as anybody could imagine. But
Well, y'all over on the East Point side of the bay?
Yeah, East Point.
East Point. Yeah.
Well, see, where I was born and raised down at East Point. It was not. East Point was not where it is now.
Okay.
East Point was a fishing village down on the end of the point, on the peninsula.
Okay.
The 1929 hurricane, it thinned out the buildings down there, you know, what few...
So you were like 4 years old? You remember the hurricane?
I remember.
Wow.
A couple of incidents that happened.
Wow.
But I do remember the hurricane.
Wow.
And it was pretty sad for some people because it just washed everything off the end of the point. But we were up at my grandmother's house, and it was kind of up on a ridge, and it was about a mile from there to the point. And we sat there and we could see the houses, things, debris washing down the marsh. But yeah, that was.
That's a hard time. I guess the seafood and being out on that water bay kept all going and everything.
Oh, yeah.
That's a big deal. Well, then you got on through, growing up through the 30s and the freshmen here, and then went on to school there.
I went to school in Carabel all 12 years.
In Carabel. Okay, and then we're getting close. The war starts coming. I guess you hear about the war and all from...
Oh, yeah. And see, my dad was in World War I. And we had this battery radio, you know, first radio in our neighborhood. And he always listened to the news, and I would always listen to it with him because he always told me about World War I. And then I just thought I knew that it was my duty when it came my turn, when I got old enough.
Yeah.
But I wanted to do it for my dad's sake because I knew that he would have been sadly disappointed if anything happened that I didn't go.
Remember where you were when you heard about Pearl Harbor? Were you listening to it?
Yeah, I was playing tennis. Whittier Brown, the school bus driver, he had a place up between the Peninsula and where Highway 98 is now.
Yeah.
Up on that bluff.
Uh-huh.
And behind his house he built a tennis court. And we used to go up there on Sundays, and it was Sunday morning, and there was about 6 of us guys up there playing tennis, and my dad came up there to tell me he just heard it on the radio. And from then on, I started playing it.
Yeah.
And but my mom and dad wanted me to finish high school, which I did. I wanted to also. And as soon as I graduated, I went.
You just volunteered for the Army, or?
I volunteered. Back then it was the Army Air Corps.
Yeah.
And they cut out the enlistments. You had to volunteer through the draft board.
Okay.
So I went over and talked to them, and they thought that was great that I wanted to go. We went to Camp Blandon, and when I got there, I told them exactly what I wanted. I wanted to be a pilot.
Yeah.
And I took all the written exams and physicals and everything. I passed everything. And then I went from there. I went to Keesleyville, Mississippi for cadet training.
Okay.
They formed a cadet squadron, and it was supposed to be in 13 weeks, I think, of basic training. And after 7 weeks, they pulled us out and said, "We need you." And we left there. We went to Santa Ana, California to see whether we were going to. It was for classification. See whether you were going to be a pilot, navigator, or a bombardier. And that's when we got the axe. We got there and was there a couple of weeks at the most, I guess. And they said they had too many in crew training, and they couldn't screen us out individually, so they took us out by squadrons, the whole squadron.
Oh my goodness.
It was,
I guess that's a disappointment then. And
well, not so much for me because I was tired of going to school. Right out of high school, But now that was not a regular college course because you ate and slept at attention in cadet life. But a lot of guys took it pretty hard. We had some guys with college degrees that they didn't even give us a stripe when they took us out. We'd been in service about 9.5, 10 months.
Yeah.
Looking back on it, I think I made a better gunner than I would have a pilot.
Yeah,
Training was
what caliber were y'all shooting?
50.
50 caliber?
Yeah.
Okay. So you learned how to shoot the gun, so now what's your next step?
Well, from there, we went to Lincoln, Nebraska to wait for assignment.
Okay.
Right out of gunner school. Oh, by the way, they didn't make us corporal either. They made us PFC. Just one stripe instead of two. Well, that didn't make any difference. But anyway, we stayed down until they got everybody and everything together. Then we converged at Alexander Army Airfield in Alexander, Louisiana.
Okay.
And there we formed a crew. I don't know how they select them, but somehow they got us all together, a 10-man crew.
Yeah.
And I was in the barracks, and this lieutenant come to the door and hollered, "Kenneth Tucker." And I said, "Yes." He said, "Come out here." And that was a pilot. He was from Wyoming, but he was originally in the infantry.
Yeah.
And he decided he wanted to fly, so he went to flight school, and lo and behold, it was 10 of us out there. And he looked at the shortest guy, Jack Taylor from Beaumont, Texas. He pointed to him and said, "Taylor, you're the ball turret gunner. You're the smallest." He said, "Okay." Then they were left. See, the radio operator, he knew his position, and flight engineer. So there was that left the left waist gunner and the right waist and the tail. He said, you guys, these three guys, decide among yourself what position you want. So, well, the right waist gunner, he was a Irishman from Massachusetts. Mm-hmm. And he would not fly any place except that right waist. He wouldn't, you couldn't get him to go back to the tail even when the plane was sitting on the ground. He was definitely not going to go back it. So this other guy made us, we both said, well, what do you want to do? And he said, doesn't make any difference to him. I said, well, it don't make any difference to me either. So I said, well, I'll take the tail. He said,
so that's how you ended up being a tail gunner.
right.
Now, you didn't realize at the time that was one of the most dangerous positions, I guess, on the plane.
Well, I was on the crew. I was on flying Scottish. I said, let's do it.
Okay.
And in that training cycle, I don't know how many crews was there because we had so many that we took turns flying night missions and daytime, you know, plus our classroom work. And then we checked out a brand new B-17, right, fresh from the factory.
Oh, man.
We took 2 familiarization hops, you know, and we just thought that was the greatest thing since sliced bread, because, you know, we was flying them old E and F models, you know, that have been just about ready for the boneyard, and get this brand new thing, and the tail section back there was twice as much fun.
So you remember when you first sat down in that tail section, did you feel excited?
Well, I did that in the gunnery school,
yeah,
but not much. I just, because practically all of our training in gunnery school was from the waist windows.
okay.
And yeah, we one thing we learned in training in the States as a crew, that nobody ever raised his voice on the intercom, no matter what was happening. And we flew all of our missions, and I can truthfully say that
Wow.
nobody ever did.
Wow. So what, can you remember some of your first missions once y'all all trained and you over there, you're in, what country are you in to start with?
We went up to Gander Lake, Newfoundland, and there was a weather front out in the Atlantic that kept us grounded for about 4 days, and we just canoed on the lakes, and it was not much to do there because there were some guys, you know, we were in, everybody was en route. And one of the things that I remember about Gander Lake, you know, like we stayed together as a crew just about all the time. And we just decided to go for a walk. We just walked at the moonlight night. We were walking around the base.
Yeah.
And met another crew that they were coming opposite direction. So the 2 pilots got together and said, well, why don't we just sit down here and have a sing-along? And you know, that was something I will always remember. There was 10 guys there on each crew.
Yeah.
That we'd never seen each other before, but we all introduced ourselves and we all sat down, and the pilots led us in songs we sang in basic training. And
what were some of those songs?
Well,
that had been so interesting.
I've been working on the railroad, and
yeah, just American classics.
It was a very memorable occasion.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, we did that a while, and we told each other good night and went our separate ways. But we stayed there till the weather cleared. We took off. We went out to the plane. We had to fuel it up ourselves. And we had winds about 55 miles an hour that morning. And I had the honor of having a nozzle up on the left wing. I was filling the tank there. And evidently I spilled some on the wing, and the gust of wind blew. I slipped off, and I landed on my feet. And didn't hurt me, but irritated me. So I told the flight engineer, I said, if you want this bird fueled, I said, go up there and do it yourself. He laughed. He got a big kick out of it. I went and got in the plane. But we took off in that 50-mile-an-hour wind.
Wow.
And we had orders. It would just send us to the next stop, you know. We didn't know where we were going till we took off from Gander Lake. The orders were to when we took off to fly a certain course and not open the orders until you were 1 hour out over the Atlantic after takeoff. Okay. And we the pilot opened them and said proceed to Georgia, Italy. Left there and went to the Azores. When we took off from there, we went to Marrakech in Morocco. And we stayed 2 or 3 days there, and that was interesting because they had a POW compound there on that base, and they were Italians. And I read some guy's book here a few years back that said that he understood they had a German prison camp on that base, but he didn't go see it, but we did. So we went around there, and there was a Moroccan guard on the front gate, had his long rifle. We walked up to him and said, "You got vino?" He said, "Yeah, vino." He leaned his rifle up against the wall and took off. We stood there and waited for him. He came back with $1:15.
Oh my goodness.
Then from there, we went up to Tunis and spent 1 night there.
Thanks for joining us for Panhandle Outdoors with Winston Chester. Panhandle Outdoors features hunting, fishing, and other activities and information to help you enjoy the great outdoors. Join us next time for Panhandle Outdoors.